Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video we will get introduced to the core architectural components of Microsoft Azure. In this video, we will see what Azure regions are, what are availability zones, what are Azure data centers, Azure resource and resource groups, subscriptions, what are management groups, and the hierarchy of resource group, subscriptions, and the management groups. So we'll first start with what is Microsoft Azure. Well, as you all know, Azure is a continually expanding set of cloud services that help you meet current and future business challenges. It gives us the freedom to build, manage, and deploy applications on a massive global network using our favorite tools and frameworks, right? So I'll quickly fire up my whiteboard and draw some pictures, diagrams to discuss the topics in this video in detail. Okay, so now, as we all know that Azure is a continually expanding of cloud services, right? So consider this box, big box of an isolated environment that Azure provides you, okay? For your own tenant. So lots of companies have their tenant, and then with Azure, you have your own tenant. Now, what does it provide you, right? Azure provides us with more than 100 services that will enable us to do everything from running the existing application on virtual machines to have the software applications with intelligent bots or mixed reality, right? So some companies would, or some teams would be entirely using the applications on virtual machines that would run in Azure. So virtual machine is running in Azure, and then you host your applications on the Azure part. And then you would also have a newly built application that you will provision on a PaaS platform as a service in Azure, right? Now, Azure also provides artificial intelligence and machine learning services that can naturally communicate with our users because they have this vision, hearing, and speech functionality. It also would provide storage solutions that will dynamically grow as per our needs or the application needs, right? So you can get started with Azure accounts, right? Because to create any resource, you would first need a subscription, right? So what is a subscription? So I'll tell you. So consider this as your Azure account to begin with, right? So this is, you are an admin. You created this Azure account and you have this, right? Just below you to onboard resources, you will create subscriptions. You can have multiple subscriptions in one account. Let's say this is subscriptions, right? So you cannot directly create resources in a subscription. You create resources in a resource group, right? So I'm referring resource groups as an RG, right? And then under resource group, you create resources. It can be a VM, it can be a network, a virtual network, it can be an app service, it can be a SQL PaaS service, it can be a simple virtual machine as well, right? So it will go up like this. Virtual machine is in a resource group is in a subscription, subscriptions are in an Azure account. All right. Now, if you are new to Azure, you can sign up for a free account on the Azure website to start exploring at no cost. Now, when you are ready, you can choose to upgrade your free account. Like I'm using a pay-as-you-go subscription. If I show you the subscription that I'm using, if you see my account, I'm using pay-as-you-go. This is the account, and if you see all resources, pay-as-you-go monthly subscription. So as and when I use the resources, I get charged, I get bill, and then I pay that bill as per the usage. I have an outstanding balance, that not much, so this is what I have. Okay, after that, when you have a subscription, you can purchase the Azure access directly from Microsoft by signing up on the Azure website or through a Microsoft representative. And then you can purchase Azure resources or access through a Microsoft partner. Now, we have a free account. What is a free account? A free account to popular Azure products for 12 months. A credit to use for the first 30 days and then access to more than 25 products that are always free. And then they also have Azure free student accounts as well. Free access to certain Azure services for 12 months, a credit to use in the first 12 months, free access to certain software developer tools. Then Azure also has Microsoft Learn Sandbox. So many of the learn exercises, when you're following the Microsoft documentation, when you wanted to do some labs, that's the called sandbox environment, which will create a temporary subscription that's added to your account. Right, so this temporary subscription allow you to create Azure resources during a Learn module, and then as and when the module is completed, Learn automatically cleans up the temporary resources for us after we have completed the module. Right, so if you want to explore the Learn Sandbox, you need to activate it. And you can, after activating, you can use the PowerShell CLI, you can use the Bash CLI, you can use the Azure CLI interactive mode, you can use the Azure portal as well. Right? So now you would be thinking like, how is Azure managing all these things? Now you need to understand the Azure infrastructure for this. Right? So if I not delete everything, because in Azure infrastructure you would hear a lot of terms like regions, availability zones, resources, subscriptions, the terms that I used, right? So now Azure has a physical infrastructure. You would say that it's in the cloud. No, that's actually a data center that you are accessing over the internet through your laptop, right? You're not having big machine server rooms, etc. You don't have any data centers, but the physical infrastructure for Azure starts with data centers. Conceptually, the data centers are the same as large corporate data centers. They are facilities with resources arranged in racks that have dedicated power, cooling, and networking infrastructure, right? Because Azure is a global cloud provider, it has data centers around the world, right? So however, these individual data centers are not directly accessible. Data centers are grouped into Azure regions or Azure availability zones that are designed to help us achieve resiliency and reliability for our business critical workloads. Now, region is a geographical area on the planet that contains at least one but potentially multiple data centers. So let's say this is the whole planet that we are thinking, and then we'll have multiple regions in this or data centers, right? And then you have Azure availability zones. Availability zones are physically separate data centers within an Azure region. So let's say this is a planet and this is the one thing that I have. This is the Azure region or a data center. Then I would have availability zone 1, availability zone 2, right? In here, I'll have resources, and then they would be paired, which will the resources from one availability zone can be failed over to second availability zone. And then I can have multiple availability zones as well. I can have third availability zone here as well. Okay. Now this is done to ensure resiliency. A minimum of 3 separate availability zones are present in all availability zone enabled regions. Right. And this is why we recommend to use availability zones in your applications, because we want to ensure that data is redundant so we can protect the information in case of a failure. Now, when you host your infrastructure, setting up your own redundancy requires that you create duplicate hardware environments. And Azure can help us make our app highly available through availability zones. Then you have the primary use case for availability zones are virtual machines, managed disk, load balancers, SQL databases. Then you do region pairing. Most Azure regions are paired with another region within the same geography. Let's say this region is US. Okay. And if two multiple regions are at least 300 miles away, we will call them paired regions. Now, this approach would allow for the replication of resources across a geography that helps reduce the likelihood of uninterrupted services, right? So, for example, examples of region pair in Azure are West US paired. So, let's say this is West and this is East US. Same way, Southeast Asia is paired with East Asia, right? Because the pair of regions are directly connected and far enough apart to be isolated from regional disasters, they can be paired. And then it comes with lots of advantages as well. Like if an extensive outage occurs, or if there is a planned Azure updates rolling out to one region, then we can have the environment running on another paired region. And with that, if you want to describe the Azure management infrastructure. So the Azure management infrastructure includes Azure resources, resource groups, subscriptions, your accounts. Same way when we talked about the hierarchy, the resource group. A resource group you would see as a simply the grouping of resources. So let me just draw this. Right, so if you want to start the grouping of resources, right, so just draw a box here. Not a pretty fancy box per se, but it will do our work. Right, so let's say I have this resource group. I'll mention RG here, and in here I will have my virtual network. I'll have my VM. I'll have my app service. Right, I'll have my SQL pass or any other resource that I want to create. Right, so while a resource group can contain many resources, a single resource can only be in one resource group at a time. Some resources may be moved between resource groups, like if you have another resource group in a subscription, right? In here, you want to move a resource, but when you move a resource to a new group, it will no longer be associated with the former group. So if you move this VM from this to here, it will not be present here. It can only be present in one resource group at a time, right? And resource groups cannot be nested, meaning you can't put resource group B inside of a resource group A. Now, if you have this subscription and you want to have, let's say this is resource group A and resource group B, you cannot have this B inside of A. It will be a separate thing. Okay. And then resource groups provide a convenient way to group resources together, right? Now, when you are provisioning resources, it's good to think about the resource group structure that best suits your needs, right? Then you have subscriptions. So let's say like you have this, right? I'll just remove it. So this is subscription, and let's say this is an Azure account. In here you can have, let's say you have a dev subscription, you have a test subscription, and you have a, what happened to my pen? Wait. And you have a prod subscription in here. Dev, test, and prod. So using Azure requires an Azure subscription. A subscription provides you with authenticated and authorized access to Azure products and services. An account can have multiple subscriptions like I showed you, but it's only required to have one. In a multi-subscription model, you can use the subscriptions to configure different billing models and apply different access management policies. And you can create additional Azure subscription as well. Now, similar to using resource groups to separate resources by functions or access, you might want to create additional subscriptions for resource or billing management purposes. Then you have Azure management groups. The final piece is the management group. Resources are gathered into resource groups and resource groups are gathered into subscriptions. If you're just starting in Azure, that might seem like enough hierarchy to keep things organized, but imagine if you're dealing with multiple applications, multiple development teams in multiple geographies, right? So if you have many subscriptions, you might need a way to efficiently manage access policies and compliance for those subscriptions. Azure management groups provide a level of scope above subscriptions, right? So if I draw another picture here to show you where my management group resides in this model. So now in here you would have a root management group, okay? And let's say this is the hierarchy under a root management group. And then you would have different subscription. You have HR, you have an IT, you have marketing, you have one other EA subscription, right? You have, and inside this, these are the root management groups and these are sub management groups. In here, under root management group, you can have a subscription. Under a management group, you can have another management group. Okay. You need to create a hierarchy that applies a policy. You can provide user access to multiple subscriptions. 10,000 management groups can be supported in a single directory. A management group tree can support up to 6 levels of depth. Each management group and subscription can support only one parent, right? So in this video, we discussed about the physical and management structure of Microsoft Azure, right? We discussed the relationship between data centers, availability zones, and regions. We explored how the infrastructure supports the benefit of the cloud, like high availability, reliability. Now you should be aware about Azure regions, region pairs, availability zones, resources, subscriptions, resource groups, management groups. So what are you waiting for? Get started with Azure, and if you have any further queries, please mention them in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Have a good day.